pen. So on this video, we're going to be talking about winter storm preparedness for both your livestock animals and our small pet species like dogs and cats. So as you all know, last week we had a bit of a freak early winter storm, and that sudden change in temperature can be really hard on our animals. So we need to do everything we can to make sure that they're going to handle it the best way they can. And three big things we need to keep in mind when we're helping them go through that storm change is water, food, and shelter. And we're going to walk through all of those things and some other helpful tips and tricks you can look into to help your animal get through any sudden storms fairly easily. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the biggest things we need to think about when preparing our animals for any kind of cold snap is their access to water. Now we want to make sure that the water is clear and accessible to all the animals in the pen. For example, if you have a lot of animals in a pen, it makes the most sense to try and have a water source in the middle so that every animal has an opportunity to try and get a drink. If it's in a corner, you can usually have a bullying situation where some animals may not be getting a good enough drink. Here in my pen, I only have one animal in here, so it's okay that it's in the corner. Now when a cold snap hits, it can freeze our water containers if you don't have a heating source in it already. So what I have here, this is a plastic tub that is filled with water, and in the winter I normally plug in this plastic tank de-icer. Now with these you need to make sure that it's for the right size tank, because if not, it's not going to get all of the tank de-iced, and it can make a very dangerous situation when your horses or other animals are drinking water. So these ones are easy to find. You can get them at any local tack shop or anything like that. You just want to make sure that it's rated for the right degrees that we get here in Colorado, and that it's the right size for your tank. You also want to make sure it's for the right type of material, because it's different if you have a metal tank or a galvanized tank compared to one that's plastic like what I have here. So you can do that. You can also, if you don't have electricity out where your tank is and you just simply can't get a cord all the way out there, what you can do is you can use anything that's like a garden tool. A lot of people use a hammer, a sledgehammer, anything like that to make sure that if there is ice coating the top of this, you want to be able to break through it and make a big enough hole where animals can still get access to water. The other part you need to think about when giving them access to water is their electrolytes. Electrolytes are a key part to making sure your animals don't get dehydrated. Now in horses, a great way to test if your horse is getting dehydrated is to do a skin test. What you do is you'd go up to them, preferably on their neck, and you would just grab it and pinch and release. If their skin goes back to the way it was in about 1 to 2 seconds, they're perfectly hydrated. If it takes longer than that, they are actually dehydrated, and that's when you're going to want to help them get more water in their system, and electrolytes can be a great way to do that. Electrolytes are basically a loose form of salt that encourages horses to drink water, because when you get a cold snap, because the air gets drier, it gets colder, things like that, they're going to want to drink less water, leading to a problem of dehydration. The electrolytes with that salt is going to create a response in their body that's going to tell them, hey, you need to go take a nice drink of water, which is exactly what we want them to do. So electrolytes come in 3 different types. It can be a gel, a paste, or a powder. So it really depends on how your horse takes medicine the best in order for you to ensure they're getting electrolytes. And then you also want to make sure they have free access to salt, because that's also going to help with that as well. So that's our key parts about water. Make sure you have access to it for them at all times, especially as the weather starts to change, and make sure you're watching it, especially to watch the temperatures and that they have access to water no matter how cold it gets, because you can get to some very serious situations very quickly if they're not able to get good access to water. And that's with all of our livestock animals and even our domestic pets. So let's move on to some other things we need to keep in mind as well.
As you can see here with sheep, it's important to give animals a space to drink in heavy ice conditions. You always want to make sure animals have access to good quality drinking water no matter the weather outside. They depend on you for their care, and in 4-H, we always strive to give them the best quality life possible. When thinking about feed for our larger livestock animals, one great feed option in the fall time, just before winter truly starts, is corn stalks. Cattle first eat the remaining corn grain, husks, leaves, and finally the stalk. If your cattle are out on corn stalks, like you see here in this picture, a good mineral is most likely the only supplement needed for the first month, unless you have some fall calving cows or stalker calves, which would require higher nutrient demands. There are some items you want to keep in mind if this is a route you choose to feed your cattle in that fall/ harsh, early wintertime period, such as the growing conditions the corn had during the growing season. Extreme dry weather can create a buildup of nitrates in the lower stalk, which can lead to nitrate poisoning. It's important not to force cattle to the stalks if the growing seasons were extremely dry, and if you are feeding baled corn stalks, you'll want to do a nitrate test just to be on the safe side. As with any animal, you want to make sure they are getting enough nutrients to keep them warm and moving during our colder months.
So when we're thinking about food, we want to make sure that we give our horses something nice and warm to eat, in the case of horses. We'll also talk about other livestock animals as well. But with horses, what you always can do is you can make them some hot mash. So what I do is I just get plain quick oats from a store of any brand, and then I'll just let this get cooking in some warm water for just a little bit, and then I'll cool it down to make sure it's just kind of like a little warm, like lukewarm, but not burning hot. I'll bring it out and let my horse enjoy it when it starts to get cold. This is simply because warm food is critical to ensuring that your animals are still eating. Food and eating is what is going to give them that inside energy that's going to keep their heart pumping and everything else moving and keeping off that cold that could seep into their bones. Now, I have an older horse, so it's really important that she has good access to warm food at all times and that she's getting enough nutrition, especially when the weather changes. Same thing with our goats, our sheep, and our cattle. We want to make sure that they have a bit more extra food to compensate for the changes their bodies are going to experience because of the weather change. So if you know a cold snap is happening, make sure if you're free feeding your cows or something like that, make sure you put out maybe a little more than you normally would. It's also nice if you have free feeding and that you have it spread out a bit so that they can take it out and lay on it to help give them a little bit of a cushion from the frozen ground that may happen depending on how cold it actually gets. So it's important that they, again, have access to clean, clear water that isn't covered by ice. They're not dehydrated so that their electrolytes are high. And then also, they have some kind of access to food, at least at all times, to help make sure that their body temperature is also staying up where it needs to go, especially if they're pregnant, older, or young animals of any species. So let's move on to shelter and a couple other things we should cover. So my barn is a 3-sided barn, and it's important we give our animals some kind of shelter when dealing with weather conditions. Now, when building a barn, you need to think about where in the world do the prevailing winds come from and from what direction. Now, here in Colorado, our winds generally come from the west and then from the east. They typically don't blow super hard from the north and the south due to the Earth's rotation, which is why my barn has a closed side on the east side, the west side, and then on the south side. But it's an open here in the north side. So we're going to go ahead and take a look inside so that you can see what I'm talking about. So this is my walkway, as you can see, to make sure that we have a safety panel here and then one here, but you can still get at least 1 to even 2 people if you really squish them in to this walking aisle. Then we have a gate that gets locked here. And then this opens up and can swing all the way and close if needed to be. But this whole area is open so that my horse has a safe, dry area to come out of the weather. And especially because she is older, it's important that she has somewhere warm and dry to be when there's harsh conditions outside. Now, not all animals need this. A lot of our cattle and things like that can definitely handle some more extreme weather out on the plains because they can get together in a herd and create some protection for themselves and things like that. But even a small lean-to is helpful if you have some older animals that might not be able to handle that kind of weather as well. So let's go ahead and talk about a few other things with some other animals that we need to address as well.
In some cases, you'll also want to think about blanketing your horses and dogs if needed. Older horses who have a hard time maintaining body heat appreciate the extra help to fight against chilly winds. Some dog breeds with short hair will also benefit from the use of a jacket. In order to find out if your animals need to be blanketed, it's best to know their age, ability to consume nutrients, and their activity level. There is no perfect winter preparedness plan for every animal. Each one has different needs and different care. Make sure you do some research on whether or not your animal needs a covering to help them prepare for the winter months.
Oh, we also need to think about how can we prepare for a cold snap with our other animals like our dogs. And one of the big things you can do, especially if you have a small dog like I have here, this is my sister's dog, she is a toy poodle named Luna, is you can have them wear sweaters, which will actually give them a little bit more of a covering from some cold snaps, especially if they get groomed quite frequently, like she does, then you'll want to definitely make sure that they have a little bit more protection before sending them outside. So if you're going to put on a piece of clothing with a dog, It's easiest if you scrunch it up so that the hole for their head is seeable. And then we're just gonna get her head through the hole here. And she gets a little bit excited when we do this, so that's why she gets all crazy like. Then we're gonna get one leg and we're gonna just help her feed it through the hole. We'll get the other leg and do the exact same thing. We'll make sure it's covered everywhere. And then what's nice is on this one, like if you had to, you could even tuck her ears in and wear a little hood, and there we go. So that's always something to keep in mind too, especially if you have chihuahuas or other small animals that maybe don't have the kind of coat that they would need. It's nice to be able to put a jacket on them when the weather gets cold, and also to put boots on their feet if you're going to be taking them for longer walks, just to make sure that they don't get any frost or ice or anything like that inside their paws. So let's talk about making sure that our dog's feet is clean and what kind of ice salt that you want to make sure you're buying to make sure it's safe for your indoor pets as well. Besides our large animals, we also need to think about our small animals, such as our rabbits and our poultry when the weather starts to change. As you can see, I've started to put more bedding down here on the ground for my chickens to help with their feet and ice and things like that. And if you look inside our little coop here, we've actually started to add a little bit more bedding in there as well, just to give them a little bit of extra fluff and comfort with the weather change. Now with chickens, depending on their age, you certainly want to look into getting a heat lamp, just because that's also something they're going to need, especially if you want them to continue laying during the colder, darker winter months. And then of course we just want to make sure that their water system is also ready to go and it's clear of ice at all times, and that their food doesn't get cold and icy as well. So something like that, whether you have small animals or big, is still important to keep in mind. But of course, we don't need to be worrying about trying to put a jacket or a sweater on our chickens. So soon enough, we're going to be needing shovels like these. So along with our coats and boots and things like that we can put on our dogs and cats and things like that, you also want to make sure that if they go outside to use the bathroom or run around or anything that has a concrete surface, anything flat where ice can develop, you're going to want to scrape that off with a shovel, just because, just like with humans, we want to try and limit the falls as much as possible. The other thing is we want to talk about is some rock salt. So this is salt that will get rid of ice and things like that because it melts it down. But if you don't get one that says pet safe on it, if you get one that's regular just like this, then what happens is when your dog is walking around and it gets into their pads of their feet, it can actually cause a chemical burn, which can really irritate their feet and make it sore for them. We also don't want them to pick it up and eat it or anything like that, as that can cause some severe internal issues as well. So make sure if you're going to scrape and then salt, you do it with the proper materials that are going to be safe for any animals that might interact with it. So that's all for our tips and tricks on our winter preparedness for our 4-H animals, both livestock and our pets. So I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.